Hi everyone, Miss Atkinson here. I wanted to do a quick video for you today about some of the basic functions on an ordinary everyday digital viewfinder camera. So this is a Kodak M580 and it's pretty basic, but it has some of the settings that you will see on most digital cameras. The first thing I wanted to point out to you was the viewfinder itself. So this is, of course, where you see the view of the shot, and this is opposed to an SLR camera, which would be a single lens reflex camera, in which you would actually look through the glass and see directly what you're photographing. So a lot of people, especially photographers from many years back, prefer the SLR because you get a more accurate view of your shot, and you also have less delay when you're taking your shot, and you don't have some framing problems that you might have in a viewfinder camera. The next thing I want to bring up to you, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with a viewfinder, it's just, slightly less accurate for some professionals. But it's become really popular because, it's so easy to use and you can see your results really big. So this right here that I just zoomed out is called the optical zoom. So that's the physical zoom that goes in and out of the camera, and this one has a pretty nice one. This is an 8 times, so it goes out really far. And that is the actual lens traveling and zooming inward, or excuse me, outward, versus the digital zoom, which you'll see that setting as well if you go to buy a camera or you're looking at the specs of your camera. And the digital zoom is the actual digital component zooming in. So physical versus digital. A more common optical zoom would be about 3 times. Would be more common. Okay. So another thing, and that was the zoom function right there that I was messing with. Yours might be on top. This one's right here. It has a little plus and minus magnifying glass. Alright, so in our view, I've got just a little still life set up. And I wanted to mention that when you're taking a shot, different cameras are set up differently, but this one, if you hold down and start depressing, you see how it is selecting the view? That's actually focusing. So you always want to make sure if it's set up on autofocus like this that you're giving it a chance to do that. And there's other ways to set it up too, which I'll talk about in a minute. Alright, the red selection right here is the timer. And if you arrow, there's different ways to set up the self-timer. And your camera may or may not have that option, but that's if you want to get in the shot or you're taking a group shot, you can set the timer. And then we've got the flash option and also what's setting the cameras on. And of course the battery life and the shot selection right here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the flash button. Now this changes my flash option. Your flash button might be located in a different place, but just to show you some of the different flash options, the A is for auto flash, so that is allowing the camera to go ahead and set up the flash parameters that it thinks is appropriate. So you can go ahead and leave it on that if you don't want to change the flash. We can turn the flash off. You definitely have some places that don't allow flash, so you want to make sure that's selected if you're in one of those locations, like a museum for instance. We've got a red eye pre-flash, and this emits a little kind of green colored on some cameras flash, like a baby flash, right before the regular flash, and that's actually to combat the red eye effect that you see on a lot of portraits. Another thing I want to talk about is the actual settings for the picture. Now, I'm hitting the actual, settings of my camera. So this is the meat of what I want you to explore in your camera. Many common digital cameras have what's called a smart capture or, an auto capture, something like that. That is your default. It's going to be whatever the camera thinks is appropriate. and that's nice if you're just taking a snapshot, but you definitely want to explore different options on your camera because you can get a lot of nice personalization and get a lot better shot in many instances. Now my camera has a video function, so that's shown there. Now what I really want to talk about here is the program setting. If you select that, you can see it tells you what it is. Used for general picture taking with access to capture settings. So this is where we can really mess with the settings of our camera. So it's allowing you to make changes. So the first option is how the camera's focusing. So it's on autofocus right now. And that's what I was talking about with if you depress the shutter a little bit, it's autofocusing right there. And you can also put it on macro where it's going to focus on things that are close up, infinity, things that are far away. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it on autofocus. Now this right here, exposure compensation, I mentioned this to a lot of you on your feedback for the first assignment. Exposure compensation is a really great tool. Usually it's on 0 as the default. And that is actually changing the amount of light that is allowed into the shutter. So this will allow you to change the brightness and darkness of your image and will help you combat over and underexposure. So if your images were too bright, you could have changed the exposure compensation before you took the shot, or alternatively or in conjunction, you can also change the brightness and contrast once it's actually uploaded to your computer. So this is a really great tool. So let me just show you. It says 0 now. So let's take a shot. You can see it looks pretty overexposed. It looked really bright. So let me just show you when you add to it. This is allowing more light in. And in an original, traditional camera, this would actually be changing the size of the shutter, allowing a bigger size so that more light came through the aperture. Okay, so I allowed more light in, so very severely overexposed. We can barely see any detail. Alright, but what about if we decrease the amount of light? Let's try it 1. So that's looking a lot better. We see a lot more contrast, a lot more detail. We can see some of the shadowing. How about at 2, which is the max exposure compensation that they're going to allow me with this camera? So I let it focus a little bit. And for this shot, with this spotlight on this little still life I've set up, -2 exposure compensation is actually really good. So definitely play around with that. It all depends on where you're at, how much light is in your environment, what you're shooting, if you're shooting far away or close up. But that's definitely a great option for you, exposure compensation. It should be under your program mode on your camera. Okay. So just to show you, there are some other settings. Some cameras have a scenes function, which is basically different presets, that you can explore. This camera has night landscape, night portrait, self-portrait, fireworks, snow, and this is just basically setting up that exposure compensation and focus for you. So definitely play around with that too. Candlelight action. So it's changing the speed of the shutter, how fast it takes a picture. If it's action, it's taking a really fast shot. If, it's a still life like this, you want to take a slow shot so it can get more focus. So a lot of the work is already done for us sometimes with digital cameras. Whereas in traditional cameras, before digital cameras, a lot of this had to be set up by hand. Okay, and of course your review is definitely an important tool too. Since many cameras have this viewfinder, definitely, check out your pictures before you upload. That was the different exposure compensations we just tried. You can even look at an index, to see a full range of the pictures that you took. So there's all kinds of different things that can help you organize your photos and also help you take the best shot possible. So I definitely invite you to explore your camera, explore the settings, and really take it to the next level and push yourself to take the best shot, and take lots of different shots. Even if you're in one spot, one location, take many different shots at different settings, and then later when you upload them you can see what the best options were, but at least you will have options when you go to edit your photos. So that is all for now, and please let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.